Hi everyone. It's me, Ellen. Obviously, this is my sister Anne. She was going to do a series of essays called Whedon Me This, but she decided she wanted to do videos instead. And with me, so that's what we're doing. Basically, what it is going through Buffy the Vampire Slayer for sure, depending on, you know, how many people like this, how many people see this.
And if we have fun doing it.
Right, going on to other Whedon works as well, but Buffy is hugely important to both of us.
It's number one!
No. Just no.
It is.
Right, Buffy. And I think it's entirely accurate to say that without Buffy, neither of us would be the people we are, and I think that a lot of fans of Buffy can say that for better, that, you know, Buffy changed their life in a good and positive and measurable way.
And a lasting way.
And lasting way. And, yeah, and also, for us, when the show first came out and when we watched it, I was 8 and she was 12. So, you know, that can be a big gap in ages, but Buffy, we always had something to talk about. Because
and talk about it we did.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. And something that we both, like, really cared about and something that made us think. And, you know, that was, you know, I credit, like, my ability to be able to think about fiction in a certain way because of Buffy, because Buffy, you know, made me think. Like, even when I was an 8-year-old and there was all this stuff, or you know, 9 or 10 and 11, stuff I didn't all understand, like, I wanted to understand it. I wanted to think about it. Like, it made me think.
And I think on that point, we had one another as constant sounding boards.
Right.
So if one of us thought something about an episode, we had the other person to say, what did you think about this?
Right.
And even at 8 and 12, we were having these pretty intelligent...
For children,
discussions, and we didn't realize that was a strange thing.
Right, no.
We were just developing our sisterhood.
Right.
Sort of on the back of this brilliant show and this wonderful man, Joss Whedon, we love you.
Yeah.
He's great. So I think that Buffy really solidified who we were, as both as people and our relationship. So it did a lot for us. So you can see why we chose to talk about it.
Yeah. So, well, I guess maybe to go back in time to I remember, you see, in this house that we still live in. Mm-hmm. Or that I still live in. She lives somewhere else. It was our grandpa's house, and one of the things that he had was this really old TV, and like that thing like got so shitty. It was so shitty.
And we had to watch Buffy. Like, other shows we would not watch. But Buffy, we had to watch it every week. So there was this point where there was like a black bar on the bottom, and the top was all like scrunched and warped.
Yeah, this TV, like, to talk about, like, it was one of the first color TVs in this subdivision that we're sitting in now.
Yeah.
Like, because my dad lived here before we did, and he
built the house.
Right, his dad. So, like, and he would tell people, oh yeah, I have color TV, and people like thought that was the shit. But anyway, like, on this shitty TV that we had, that was like from the 60s, and a fucking heirloom that still worked 30 years later.
Yeah.
Watching the WB. Remember the WB when that was a thing? Oh, memories of the freaking WB. Anyway, like Seventh Heaven. We watched Seventh Heaven, and
until it got incredibly stupid. But
yeah, whatever. That's another thing for another day. They advertised Buffy and in the advertisements they talked about the X-Files. They did it in like the movie phone voice, you know. I'm sure you guys maybe remember this, those of you who are old enough, but they were like, and from an executive producer of the X-Files. And I think that's Kelly Manners, isn't it?
No, it's Greenwald did. David Greenwald did.
But I don't think he was an executive producer. I think that's Kelly Manners.
Maybe.
I think so. Correct me below or
tell us if we're wrong.
If we're wrong about that. But anyways, right. So they advertised this and we both.
Also, I should quickly mention we're gonna nerd out about like directors and writers. Because not that we don't love the cast, we'll gush about them too. Believe me, we will. I mean, come on, Charisma Carpenter. Seriously.
She is so brilliant.
Fucking rock star.
She is so cool.
Love you. But anyway, we're gonna talk about the writers and the directors because they are the lifeblood of the show.
Yeah.
And we love them.
We love them and we still like follow
their
writers and careers and we like get excited when we see, you know, like, oh my god, you know, remember not Greenwald, another Drew Goddard wrote some episodes of Lost, and I'm like, oh my god, Drew Goddard wrote this episode, holy fucking shit, that's awesome.
And David Fury's doing 24 now, so whenever I see David Fury on the screen, I'm like, yeah.
So anyways, right, and the X-Files, we watched the X-Files when we were youngins and when we were really probably too young to watch. Like, I watch X-Files now in my 20s, and I feel like only now do I really appreciate it.
And understand all the levels.
Understand it, but I mean, I just knew, like, you know, scary alien things, and Mulder was my
Super
first
hot.
crush when I was 5 or 6 or however young I was when I started watching X-Files, but yeah, so anyway, X-Files was an advertisement for Buffy,
draw.
so that was our draw, and yeah, like, I remember watching the first episode, and I also remember, like, the conversation that my mom tried to have with me after a few episodes, or our mom was like, Ellen, I don't think you're old enough to watch that show,
and we're like,
and you know, like, watched it anyway. I assume probably because, like, the show didn't give me nightmares ever when I was, like, you know, during the first few seasons of it. Like, I was never like, oh, X-Files scared me. Or Buffy scared me, or X-Files really ever. And yeah, so that never happened, so that's probably why she let us keep watching it. And yeah, no,
plus I was like, Mom, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, the first episode though,
Welcome to the Hellmouth.
Welcome to the Hellmouth. I remember, like, not too much about the experience of watching it. Like, I remember liking it, but I do remember the first scene,
the opening scene
with Darla,
Julie Benz,
and she, you know, she comes in and it's this guy and this girl, and you know, like, something that I really wasn't cognizant of the time of how Joss, you know, plays on audience expectation of, like, what you expect is you don't expect the girl to be the monster. Like, you think something is going to come and get this, you know, like, young couple, or the guy is going to be the one to attack the girl, but that instead it's the girl who's the monster, and she turns around and bites him and kills him.
Yeah, and that's something that now, you know, in today, 2014, this is a well-known mark of Whedon.
Right.
Of the Joss.
Of the Joss.
Yeah. is that he does this. He takes something known and totally flips it on its head and gives you a completely different experience that you weren't expecting at all.
Or one thing, I think it's in the first episode of season 2 of Angel, where there's like a guy, like a white guy who's trying to get into his car. And a gun, pops out, and he's obviously black and he's all shadowy, and he has his crew of fighters behind him.
Looks like gangster.
Yeah, gangster is gonna get this white guy, and of course then they run, after a vampire, and they end up, or whatever, and they end up saving this guy. So that's just something that, Joss does, and something constantly, and something that he loves to do, and it's certainly like a mark of his work, something, like this is something that he made.
And I think that's one of the reasons that, Buffy really can keep you on your toes. It's not a show, I mean, yes, it is formulaic, but it's not a show where you're going to go into it going, yeah, I saw this, and this coming, which now I feel like even genre fiction has slipped into, oh yeah, I see where this plot point is going.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is what's going to happen. And I think a part of that is because I had the privilege and luxury to really have my genre experience based on Buffy, where you were always guessing what would happen next.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, in season 5, at the end of episode 1, Dawn just shows up.
Right.
And all of a sudden Buffy has this sister, and you're like, WTF, where did this chick come from? Like, hi, Michelle Trachtenberg, Harriet the Spy, what are you doing in Buffy? So that's just like one example of how Whedon and the Buffyverse constantly keeps you on your toes.
Yeah. And to talk a bit about another reason why we think that this show is worth doing is because of how influential Buffy has been, and how it's,
on a cultural
level, and certainly with storytelling, like or storytellers. Mm-hmm. In the first episode of True Blood, in the commentary, we love True Blood. Alan Ball, he talks a bit about Buffy, mm-hmm. and or I think in other episodes makes reference to Buffy. So even if Buffy isn't necessarily an influence on True Blood, it has certainly earned its place in the paragon of vampire fiction that you go to, that you take into consideration when you're making your vampire show. Absolutely.
It's really provided a base for a lot of vampire fiction.
And, genre fiction in general.
Yeah.
Like, on the mixing of genres was something.
I was just gonna say that.
I mean, something certainly in the X-Files was a part of the show, because X-Files was like a cop show, but it was also like a cop show with monsters and aliens and stuff.
And then when you get further in, a couple of seasons under your belt, then X-Files starts becoming funny. Who knew that could happen?
Well, it was funny at
I know, but it played more with itself.
Yeah, like it had, an air, and a more of an air of fun to it.
Right, which Buffy has right out of the gate.
Right away.
It has that
it's
ability.
mixing, like, one of the reasons why, and so many people decry, or at the time decried, like, how Buffy was ignored for Emmys and such, was because, like, it was a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. Like, it was a horror show, and it was, a show about, like, growing up, and it was a comedy, and it was an allegory for all sorts of things, and
it was a drama.
It was a drama, and you know, so like that mixing of genres is something that a lot of people can see in something like Supernatural, which without X-Files and Buffy, Supernatural wouldn't exist.
Let's be real.
Let's be real. And I know that Eric Kripke in one of the interviews of the first season, like he said, you know, people asked, he's like, oh, I'm not really influenced by Buffy or X-Files, I'm influenced by, you know, horror movies and stuff, and it's like, no, Kripke, your show is also wouldn't exist without these other two things and a couple of other things too that he readily admits that he takes inspiration from.
Also, just sort of jumping quickly, because we're talking about Supernatural, Kim Manners obviously played a huge role on Supernatural.
Yeah, but
too.
we're trying. But that's
I know, but still.
But anyway,
we can pepper some X-Files.
Pepper some X-Files and but and also with the writers of Buffy, the writers of Supernatural, a lot of them readily admit that they themselves are fans of Buffy.
Yeah.
Like Robbie Thompson is a fan of Buffy, and so is now Robert Burns, and Ben Edlund. He never worked on Buffy, but he worked on Angel and was a peer, co-worker, friend of Joss for a while, and right before he came onto Supernatural. So,
and let's not forget the Buffy stars that came on and hung out for a little while. I mean, you have Amber Benson. You have, again, second Charisma Carpenter reference. You have James Marsters.
But yeah, like these are actors. These are actors who, because they were in Buffy and part of the Buffyverse, have notoriety for being like stars for Buffy because of Buffy. They're now recognizable people. So I think that that's just more of the influence that Buffy has had, than obviously on these actors' lives. And also, obviously on the writers too, as I talked a bit about Ben. But if you look at, the other writers who worked on Buffy, like these are people who have had now careers after Buffy and are a part of successful shows, and
that goes
also
for directors as well.
And people and shows we watch and shows we like, and probably a lot of you too, or at least never liked, at least heard of. Excuse me. So yeah, I think that's basically it. I don't have anything else to say. Hopefully the first real episode of this talking about Welcome to the Hellmouth will be
The Harvest.
It will be next week. So
that's our plan.
Okay, so
thanks
bye.
for listening to us chat.
Bye. Kisses. Mwah mwah.
We didn't mean this till next time.
That's lame. Shit.